guys, welcome to the show. Today on the show we have Matthew Damian. Matthew Damian is one of my favorite guests on the podcast. He does all our IT stuff for the show, and all the stuff you actually hear through the podcast is Matt's, if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever like that. Matt is a political science expert and knows more about American politics than most Americans do. So this was a good show. We got into some Twitter and Instagram stuff and social media and a lot of politics. So hope you enjoy it. All right, Matthew Damian, back on the show. We were just looking at Lisbon stats. I'm super psyched. We're getting some downloads. Actually, people are actually listening to the podcast.
Yeah, we worked it out. You're getting at least 10,000 per month now.
Yeah,
at least, because who knows what iTunes numbers are.
Yeah, because it doesn't record iTunes.
Yeah,
right?
So you've got your Spotify stats, your Google podcast stats. I don't think it includes your YouTube stats, so that's in another additional outlet as well. So congratulations, man.
Thank you.
You're now more popular than my show.
I'm going to start reaching out to sponsors now and strong-arming them into sponsoring the show, and then we got to figure out how to do that without irritating everyone, because that's, I spend a lot of time just hitting the 15-second jump button every time there's a sponsor on a different podcast. So.
Well, they can't jump you though, because if you embed it, I get what you're saying.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
We've got to make sure that the sponsors do sign up, that you actually have to listen. But I talked to some people at the Arnold who I think kind of the same way we're doing our events here at the gym, where I'm trying to get not just give me your money and I've got to talk about MeUndies or whatever, but people who are actually going to look at our listeners as potential customers. Like I was talking to a beard oil company, and then we got another beard oil company come to the gym for Anvil and Crom, and then Viking Coffee, things that our people are actually going to, coffee, beard oil, weightlifting shit, they're all going to jump on that stuff.
I like the... We can't strong arm them, but just give me your money.
This is the Italian in me coming out.
The mafia, right?
You guys are going to sponsor us whether you like it or not.
Yeah, just knock on the door, right? And make sure the horse's head's in there. I've seen The Godfather.
Does anyone understand that reference anymore?
I don't know. Surely they should. I mean, if I understand it.
Well, you watched Seinfeld, though, too. So.
But I had seen The Godfather, so
right.
I knew it beyond Seinfeld, but I haven't seen the.
But I mean, a lot of people your age aren't watching Seinfeld reruns either, so.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah?
You'd be surprised. The Simpsons have dropped off. I think a lot of people don't watch The Simpsons.
Is that still on the air?
I think so. That's like the 30th episode. No one watches it.
No.
I remember when I was younger in Australia, we had cable, and every morning on Saturday and Sunday you had a 3-hour block of The Simpsons.
Okay.
I don't know why, but they just did. And I would always tune in, but I'd always check to see which season it was. And if it was anything after season 14, I wouldn't touch it.
They're just sleeping at the wheel right
now. It's cruise control. So, but yeah, Seinfeld's still fairly popular. Seinfeld went for a huge number on Hulu. It was like 180 million or something like that.
Is that the only place that plays it? That's where I watch it. It's on Hulu.
I think it's the only streaming place. Yeah. I think it's on TBS or whatever.
My wife was sick the other day and took over my Netflix account, so I was I guess I'll have to watch reruns of Seinfeld for the next couple hours, And
what was she watching? Horror stuff?
She loves horror stuff. I call it murder porn. So Ashley's into that shit too, right? She loves the murder. Anything where you're being murdered or being tricked into being kidnapped or anything. Then she watches some horrible dramas where she'll watch like 2 episodes of it and then she's not even paying attention to it. But I mean, just some of the most god-awful, boring stuff you could ever possibly imagine. And I'll sit down next to her and I'll start watching in the middle of the show and I'm like, what are we watching here? Nothing is happening. I need like karate or something,
I love the, I'm not sure what Erin's like, but with Ash, right, she'll watch all that stuff and not be fazed at all. It's completely like, she's completely desensitized to it. But this morning, for example, I woke up to the news. I'm not sure if you heard about what happened in New Zealand.
Christchurch, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
and I was like, holy shit. So I'm telling Ash about it. She's like, oh, that's terrible, right? So I'm reading about it. She goes, why are you reading that? Like, it's sad.
Right.
But I'm trying to figure out what happened. So on one side, they'll watch all this horrific serial killer shit. But then on the other side, like something actually just develops and trying to figure out what's actually happened.
Well, that's it. And the thing is, Erin will watch, all this serial killer shit. But, I tried to get her to watch Sons of Anarchy. And I don't know if did you ever watch Sons of Anarchy?
It's on my to-do list.
Kind of hokey.
Yeah.
But it was a good it was like bikers in California. And there was a couple horrific episodes where she just happened to be, it was the one where Opie gets killed and the one where they burned Tig's daughters, for the people out there listening. And she just happened to watch those two episodes, which are the two most horrific ones in the entire series. She couldn't watch it again. I'm like, but you watch all this real life shit all the time. You know, I didn't understand, where that comes from. But she does not like violence of any kind if it's drama. But if it's real, then it's super fascinating.
No wonder she resists the Stone Cold Stunners that you tried.
She resists the Stone Cold Stunners. She is laughing at my new jiu-jitsu hobby. It's a constant source of entertainment for her. So,
when are you going to bring her back on the show? I've been on the show more than she has.
I'd love to bring her back on the show. She just got a new job, so she's neck deep, and she's actually running the infusion clinic at the VA. So she is just swamped with stuff. But I'd love to bring her back on the show because she always has we have pretty interesting talks. And arguments, and we have different views on a lot of things, as I'm sure you guys do. And
what makes you say that?
Married life in America is treating you well, I take it.
Oh, it's good, man. It's good. It's getting warmer, so I'm happier with that.
Man, I'm sure I wasn't the only one who warned you about this.
Yeah, but there's warning it and living it.
This is mild. This is super.
Oh, come
mild.
on! No, you had that. What was it? A snow apocalypse or whatever they called that? That
was weak.
That was weak?
Oh my God. Last year we had, I think, something like 35 days with negative temperatures, below zero temperatures. This has been beautiful. You were laughing at me because I showed up in flip-flops today and it's 48 degrees outside.
Look, I think my body's getting used to it though. Because when it is over above freezing, I'm walking around and just...
Right.
Not shorts, but sometimes a t-shirt.
I think they say it thickens your blood and then you get used to it. I think you just get used to the pain,
I don't know how I'm going to adjust if I ever go back to Australia.
You'll adjust fast, let me tell you.
Yeah, probably. But some interesting stuff happening in the world of the digital world.
Yeah, that's how we started thinking about talking about this today, because we both had watched the podcast with Rogan and
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey and Tim Pool, who were talking about the Twitter stuff. And I'm clueless about Twitter, but they were actually talking about a couple different platforms. Yeah,
so a bit of context. Joe Rogan had Jack Dorsey on individually prior to, and he was kind of shafted, not shafted, but he received a lot of backlash for not really drilling Dorsey on a lot of legitimate criticisms towards the bias on that platform. So Rogan, to his credit, I remember you bringing it up to me because I came into work on some stuff, and I was like, dude, I can't believe he... Because we've seen him go hard on plenty of people on a lot of things, and that's what makes him such a respected...
Yes.
I wouldn't say journalist, but just a source of information.
And I think that's what pissed a lot of people off, for sure.
So to his credit... He admitted that he knew nothing really about it, which is fair. And so we got someone on that did know something about it, which is Tim Pool. And I sort of half know who Tim Pool is. I know he was a photographer in the, I think it was the Occupy
Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street.
So he was actually not for them, but he was going to those events and then just documenting them. So he's been sort of in one of the leading figures, because that was 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
All that
it probably was about 10 years ago.
So that was really before Twitter and all that. So he's been at the forefront for a lot of stuff. So he was on, and you messaged me, and you actually pointed this thing out to me. I was like, I've already seen it.
Right.
But I thought it was a really interesting conversation. Before I get into it, what was your take on it? Because you were
the original one or the one that they just
the second one.
So I could see both without having any knowledge of because I don't follow any celebrities really on any platform, but these people getting banned and things like that, it seemed like I could understand both points of view. I think there was a lot of lawyer speak from Twitter,
Yeah.
and I think that was intentional, that he brought her on so that he had an out, and he could say, well, I'm going to give it to you to explain that. And having dealt with lawyers as a contract negotiator for years, I understand that. And you can't get... they're never going to say anything that's going to incriminate them. I could see their explanations as legitimate. But whether it's true or not, I don't know. And Poole really hit them hard. He didn't let them go, even at the very end when Rogan was kind of like, well, I think we had an interesting conversation here and a lot of things. And Poole just kept hitting them.
Well, I think the frustration that I'm not sure if he's left or right. It doesn't matter.
He seems to be left, but he was arguing on behalf of the right.
Well, that's a true libertarian right there.
Absolutely, and that's the way I feel.
Yeah.
I'm going to tip this here so you can actually see
what's going on. That's fine.
We're trying these new microphones here in the studio, so...
Yeah, let us know if it sucks. We'll take it back to Best Buy. No, but what he was saying, and I can understand his frustration too, because I was hearing a lot of those responses. So what he would do was... he would give an example of bias.
Right.
And the lady, I don't know what her name was. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it.
Oh, it was some Indian name.
Yeah. She was very articulate, though. She knew what she was talking about. And she would say, well, we need to see the context to apply it. So the context was then applied to it.
And she had some of the tweets. Like, some of the ones, which that kind of threw up some warning signs, too, because some of the tweets she had that they needed were right there in front of her.
Well, I think she knew where it was going to go. Like, the most controversial ones, like Milo and I don't know who else, like the Covington kids and all that stuff. So getting back to it, Tim Poole would give an example. She would say, we need to see the right context because we actually have to prove there's intent to harass.
Right.
And then he'd say, well, so there's context, so we need the context. So they'd go into the context and, all right, we need examples. And it would go into this loop where it was almost intentional to just try to deflect.
Right.
It's what you're talking about. It's a lawyer speak. But then why would you even show up to the show then, is what I'm saying. Because Twitter doesn't need to go on that show.
No.
Which makes you wonder if it's actually starting to really die off as a platform. Please.
I don't understand. It's the one platform I've never really been interested in. And Refined Savage is on Twitter, but it just gets shared same way as Facebook through Instagram to it. But
yeah.
I don't enjoy celebrities enough that I would follow them, and none of the people I know personally spend that much time on Twitter. Like, if you were to go to people in the gym here, none of them are on Twitter,
I think social media in general, I'm not sure if we've talked about this before on air, I know we've talked about it before though, I think social media is very bot driven. So I think a lot of it is automated, and people go for those likes because they think they're real people, but they're actually robots. They're actual Google bots or Twitter bots or whatever to try to inflate it. A great example of this is, do you remember the website Holly Madison?
Yes.
Yeah. So I watched a documentary on that on Netflix, and this is when I started to clue in on this. Because I remember hearing about it as a kid. I knew it was a cheating website or whatever, like for people to have affairs. But I started to, and during the documentary, what they actually did was, because the way that they worked was, if you're a man on there, you actually had to pay to receive and send messages.
Right.
If you're a girl, it was free. So
just like ladies' night at the club.
Pretty much, yeah. Because there was a lot more guys there than girls,
right.
So they were trying to bring girls on. But what they would actually do, you can call it genius, you can call it fraud, you can call it whatever, but it made them money. They actually had bots on there pretending to be women, but they were automated. So they would send a message to somebody, and the person would get an email saying, "Hey, you received a message from, I don't know, Rosie or whoever, right?" So people would actually have to pay and go see it, but it was all bot driven, right? Because then it would actually, and then people would pay for it. And this all came out because people actually had to pay to get their emails removed from that when they wanted to get off it, in case their wife will find out or their husband will find out. It actually came out that they never removed those emails, and then they got hacked, and then the emails got dumped, and then they got so they got shafted so badly. But when I heard that about the bots, it made me wonder about social media. Because you go on social media, and you're right, I don't know anyone else in real life that's actually been on Twitter.
Right.
And the reality of it is makes me wonder. Like, I'm nearly 25, so I'm a younger generation, right? But if people of my generation aren't using it, then who the hell is using it?
Yeah. Right.
And they're meant to have all these millions of users logging daily and whatever. Then wouldn't my generation be using it? And that made me wonder, then who is actually responding to this? And then the backlash that I get on my podcast, because I'm very critical of the current NBA, even though it's what I talk about. And it's the same generic stuff. If I say something about LeBron, or instantly, you're a hater, you're a hater, you're a hater. Right. And it makes me wonder, who are these people? You look at their profiles, there's nothing on there.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if that's actually all bots.
Did you see the podcast that Rogan put out maybe 2 days ago with the girl talking about this very subject?
No,
so it was really interesting, and she was talking about bots from Russia, but from everywhere, and how many of them there are out there, and where they come from, and how they would take over. Like say, I listened. I was following a couple of these on Facebook that were history related. It was like pictures from history.
Okay.
So it seems benign enough, and you go there and you see these pictures. But I noticed, like, every once in a while they would post a controversial picture with a controversial message, underneath it,
yeah.
And it would incite so much hatred and people yelling. And then she's talking about these sites where a lot of them are just bots meant to stir up controversy and fighting with people.
Well, I don't doubt it, because it's so almost impossible to tell who's a bot and who's not.
So the way she said you could tell it is if they were cutting and pasting things from someone else and putting it in there. It was perfect English and grammatically perfect, but if they were doing it themselves, you could see that the verbs and the adverbs weren't matching, so it was like someone not familiar with the language. So every once in a while they would catch them in the lie just by grammatical mistakes, is the way she was talking about it.
You'd think if they were going to invest in all those bots, they'd at least get the grammar right. But that's interesting. I'll check that out. You said it just came out?
Just came out a couple days ago.
Okay, I'll have a listen to it. But once again, though, I think it's a good way. It's probably proven to be quite effective, but it's also fraudulent.
Right.
And especially, I'm not sure if Twitter is a publicly owned company. I know it has big people investing in it. Mm-hmm. But I know Facebook's publicly owned.
Yeah.
Now, if Facebook's doing that and they're going to advertisers or people that are investing in it because they think, hey, advertisers are actually going to be spending money here, but it turns out it's all bots.
Right.
My goodness. And especially if people are actually advertising on there and they're under the expectation that they're going to reach 200,000 people, just say they drop down $2,000 on ads.
Right.
And they're saying, yeah, we could get you up to 2,000 people, but it's actually 2,000 bots, or 200,000 bots.
Right.
Excuse me. Then they could be in all kinds of trouble for that.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, and I one of the things I had looked at it like on Instagram is I'll see a company, similar to ours or something, just selling T-shirts or doing a podcast, and I'll look at their followers, and they've got 40,000 followers. I've never heard of them before. So I talked to some friends, and a lot of it is purchased followers who are just fake accounts and bots, and they're not getting anything from it, but they look really cool because they've got 40,000 followers.
It's really easy to see if they're purchased.
Right.
You just look at how many people they have as following them, and then you look at the engagement on their actual posts.
Right.
So if they've got 200,000 people meant to be following them, but then you scroll down their pictures and they got like 50 likes on the picture. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, and there's people I know in the game that are like, I know them, and you look at it, it's like, oh, you've got 60,000 followers and 75 likes on that picture. What the fuck,
It's kind of pathetic, isn't it, when you think about it? I mean, maybe it works, but it's still pathetic.
Yeah.
Like, why would you be that vain to think that that's... I mean, it might create the perception that you're bigger than what you actually are, but if you're not, I don't know. It's very superficial.
Yeah. And I think it's meant to boost their status among other people. Oh shit! Well, they have 60,000 followers. They must be doing something right. I'll follow them too.
But what happens, right? If they're, especially if they're a business, what happens if like a business will actually reach out to them and say, hey, we would like to do some advertising with you or whatever, under the presumption,
Yeah.
They've got 100,000.
Right.
So you do some business with them, and it turns out that they get no sales, or they get one sale out of a $500 investment, initial investment for some advertising, and then like it just falls flat on its face. To me, like if your end goal is to make money from it, by taking those shortcuts, you've essentially ruined any chance you've got.
Sure.
Because either they're going to instantly assume correctly that it's purchase followers, or they're going to say, well, that's got no value to it whatsoever. Your followers, your audience has no value. So in the long run, that's even more harmful. So
yeah,
I mean, you've done all that hard work to get somebody, like in terms of producing content, whether it's on social media or podcasts or videos or whatever, and then you've gotten to the point where you actually brought that advertiser through the door, so to speak, for nothing.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but
I like to watch my followers trickle in, and it's amazing when you hit it right when you'll put up a post and all of a sudden you'll get 100 new followers in a day, but I know even on the days where I'm getting 12 new followers that you're doing something right. They're trickling in. They're finding your message organically. They're becoming engaged, and whether they buy a T-shirt from you or not, but obviously they're listening to the podcast, and
that the organic reach is perfect, because when they listen to you consistently, they're going to tell their friends about it.
Right. They're
going to say, just like we're talking about Joe Rogan's thing. Like, we end up talking about it, and we end up doing a show about it, and someone might listen to ours, and then they might tell somebody else about our show and our interpretation, or your show, but our episode, continuing on. So, I mean, that has some genuine value to it. I think the frustration that a lot of people have is how powerful and how good the internet can actually be.
Sure.
And we're seeing it being manipulated. Because I'm sure you're aware, but when I was growing up, it was called social networking. It wasn't social media. Mm-hmm. And once the media got its grubby little hands on it, that's when you started to see people hate it.
Right.
Before then, it was great. You share pictures. You can keep in touch with people that you hadn't seen in years, relatives or people from school or whatever. There was no problems whatsoever.
Yeah, and you see it. Instagram is my favorite platform because it just seems to still be more people just posting pictures, and it's more of a positive message. Right. Facebook is such a swamp, and it's not just you're following, the guy you were in second period history with in high school, and you're following, some author whose books you love, and everyone in between. And I've found that the unfollow button is the best. As soon as you send one or two messages out that irritate me, or politically based, or Jesus loves you, I just unfollow you immediately,
I think Facebook has a couple of problems. One, it's ugly as anything. Mm-hmm. It is really ugly.
Yes.
From a graphical standpoint, I can't even stand the look of it. At least Twitter and Instagram, they look good.
Yeah.
But I think what Twitter is on the verge of becoming...
That's interesting you say that, because it is ugly.
It just looks rank. Like the colors are terrible, like all white as a background as well.
And I've tried to change the colors, and it doesn't help at all. It just makes it even weirder.
That's how little time I spend on it. But I think what's happened to Twitter, and Facebook has followed in that, or I'm not sure if it was the other way around, is it's on the verge of becoming just basically a pinboard of news articles.
Yeah.
If I want the news, I'll go check the news sites out.
Yeah.
If I want to see what my friends are up to, then that's where I would actually use Facebook. And because that doesn't happen anymore, I rarely use the accounts anymore. The only time that I'll use the account is for the podcast. So if I'm running a poll, or if I want to, if I've done something with the book, and I want to send out, hey, what do you guys think of this for a chapter? What's your opinions? Then I'll use that.
Right.
But on my personal account, I never use that. It's very rare. So I'll actually have to say, hey, good to see you guys are still around.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm surprised at how many people still are around, but they're just scrolling because they're still responding. And these are real life people. Yeah. I don't have any bots, or at least I don't think they're bots. I don't know if it's actually my friends or not, or if it's clones. Who knows?
Sure.
Who knows?
Yeah, with Facebook, I tend to just share stuff from either Blind Dog or Fine Savage on there. Every once in a while, I'll put something on. I put a bunch of stuff on today because today's the Ides of March, which, Julius Caesar, and that was my favorite play, my favorite Shakespearean play that I really got into as a kid, or as a high school student. So I always share something about the Ides of March. But it's very rare that I put up a personal post that isn't business related.
Right.
And it's just because you kind of, and I think, to be honest with you, if I didn't own these two businesses, I don't think I'd be on Facebook at all, or maybe not on social media in general.
Do you think it was a phase? Do you think social media is just a phase?
I don't know what comes next. I just don't know.
But, I mean, you think about it, we've seen fads before. We have seen fads before.
Yeah, but we've also seen the TV and the radio that have lasted forever,
But they had some kind of entertainment value.
Yeah.
And look, hey, who knows where TV and radio is going to go?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, podcasts are consumed more in the United States than radio is now.
Yeah.
And YouTube's coming along, and that's really challenging television. I mean, we've seen cable TVs dying a lot, as when you take into account Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube.
Yeah, I spend the majority of my time on Netflix and YouTube, and I don't. We've got a smart TV, so we got a smart TV and an Apple TV. So, I mean, everything we watch is app related. There's no, how I found out about the Christchurch shooting was the internet. There was no Good Morning America. I don't even know if that's still a thing or not. That gave me my news this morning when I woke up.
Right. No, but the point is, like, it's taken a while for those ones to really get toppled. But I think give it 5 years, there'll be no question that you'll see that on-demand content will have replaced at least traditional cable TV.
I think so too.
If it hasn't already.
Yeah.
But in terms of social media, I think social media is dying to a point that it's now basically just, hey, here's a news article.
Right.
Okay. I don't want to see that news article necessarily, especially if it's, and this gets back to the bias part because if that's the direction they're going, and it's obvious that they're biased. See, here's the thing that really struck out to me in the Tim Pool and Jack Dorsey interview, is the lawyer speak, as you said, that was alarming but not surprising, and she did 80% of the talking, as opposed to Jack Dorsey did. It was
Thank God, too, because he's the most boring motherfucker on the planet.
He mumbles.
Oh, my God.
Really?
For a guy who's had this worldwide exposure, Jesus Christ, dude.
Get some PR. He's doing all this PR.
Yeah.
Get somebody who can actually speak.
Anyhow, though, go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's cool. But what was frustrating was, even in her responses, you could tell the bias. So I'll give you a couple of examples off the top of my head. Keep in mind, it's been a couple of weeks since I saw it. There was the example of the learn to code thing, right? And people instantly getting banned for that. Now, I was unaware of it. I had heard about it prior, but I didn't know people were getting banned for it. Because as I said, I don't use Twitter, so I didn't know about it. But I knew that when people, miners or engineers or whatever, that had no experience in coding or using a computer like that, were being laid off, these blue-collar workers, the response from journalists was like, hey, maybe you should learn to code. Like, do you know how abstract that is? That's like sending one of these millennial idiots out to war. They'd have no chance.
I couldn't learn to code if my life depended on it.
Right. So, I mean, it's so unrealistic and unreasonable. I'm not sure if they were malicious with it.
Right.
Or if it was just shows the disconnect between journalists and the rest of society. But people were getting banned because when journalists were starting to feel the pinch from companies going and they were getting laid off, people are now saying it back to them, hey, maybe you should learn how to code, So they were getting banned for that because that was considered harassment. And they were saying, oh, well, they got up and they said, well, maybe this is when they screwed up, because they were admitting that they overreacted with it. But they didn't do anything to bring those other people back.
Right.
Now, on the other side of it, you still had people with the Covington kids who were, death threats or incites to violence.
They were the MAGA hack guys in Washington, right?
Yeah, the kids, the school kids. They went to a pro-life march.
That whole thing was insane. It was so insane. Did
you see the money that they're suing CNN and
no
Washington Post? It's over $500 million now. Good.
Yeah,
because
they ruined that. They botched that whole thing, and you're dealing with children.
Yes, that makes it 10 times worse. So if they're so quick to protect the Leslie Jones of the world or the journalists of the world, you would think they would actually also have that same standard for kids, 15, 16-year-old kids who are just standing there. They're not public figures.
I mean, the whole situation, and God, I am not a Trump guy at all, but you have to identify bullshit when you see it. And that whole, once I actually saw the clip that said the whole video, and I watched the whole, I don't know, it was like 18 minutes or something.
I watched the 2-hour one.
Okay. But it was okay, everyone was behaving poorly, in my opinion, but the only group that got in trouble were the people we expect to behave poorly, and it was the children, and in my opinion, they were the least of the poorly behaving humans in that whole scenario. The native, first of all, the black Israelites, who are not known for well-behaved
but still, shouldn't they be held accountable for that?
You would think that someone yelling out that white people should be killed and
the homosexual stuff,
right, all that. They're the most. I don't know how you deal with those people on a daily basis, but they started the whole thing. Yeah. Not a damn thing was mentioned about them, and then you had the school kids who were there on their field trip, obviously religious kids, whatever. Kind of getting into it with them. And then you have the Native American gentleman who comes up, who, just because he's a Native American gentleman, is all of a sudden a hero and a person above reproach, and he was just calmly beating his drum and chanting
in someone's face.
I tell you what, if he would have done that in my face, I wouldn't have let him get that close to me, number one. I don't care what the situation was. You weren't going to get that close to me. But for that kid to stand there and just smile, and that became the whole narrative, was this kid was smirking at him. What was he supposed to do in that situation? Should he flee? Should he push the man? Should he stand stone-faced and just let this man chant in his face? I don't know where, but they were the only ones that were taken to task for that whole situation.
So let's flip this around. This is the way that I test out whether something's fair or not. Let's flip this around. Let's assume that the Covington kids acted like the black Israelites.
Right.
What would the reaction have been to that?
Pretty much the same as it was for them just wearing MAGA hats.
Yeah, no, but it would have been 10 times worse because they would actually had justification.
Absolutely, yeah.
What would
wouldn't have to have been made up.
Yeah, what would the reaction have been had there been a Native American group of people there, and say the MAGA kids walked up to them, the Covington kids walked up to them and started to beat their drums and get in their face? What would the reaction have been there? You're right, it would have been probably the same. So what we saw, but
you're right. It would have been tenfold because they would have actually had some backing for the story.
Yeah. So, but the fact that they were completely silent about this.
Yeah.
And I think they so desperately, and this is why it's got to be biased, right? They so desperately wanted to paint the picture of those kids being racist, those kids being disrespectful, those kids being belligerent, all that stuff, that the facts didn't matter.
Right.
And this is why I love the fact that they're getting sued. They need to be sued for this, these outlets. I'm surprised that Twitter isn't being sued for this because of the inconsistencies in the way that they handled the Learn to Code stuff as opposed to them. Because they let him out to hang him out to dry. And the people that called for violence and called for doxing, if you guys listening don't know what doxing is.
I had to go look it up.
Yeah, it's when you try to get personal information of people online. So,
and Kathy Griffith, the comedian, quote unquote.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Was the one trying to get these kids' addresses and home phone numbers posted.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
She's an animal. She's an absolute animal. She should be dealt with. I mean, some of the things she's done in her life.
And she's been rewarded for it.
Right.
That's the disturbing thought.
And these are wide, sweeping grasps at notoriety from a talentless person. She's not funny. She's never been funny. And she has no standing anymore left in society other than to be a shit stirrer. So she's Milo on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Although Milo didn't ruin Seinfeld episodes.
She did ruin Seinfeld.
Those were horrible.
She was so annoying.
If you want a character to hate, okay, sure, but at least make it funny if it's on Seinfeld. Like, we've got characters to hate on there that are classics, Babu or whoever.
Babu.
I was Babu at one point. I understand Babu's. I was waiting for my.
You were Babu.
Yeah. I was waiting for my immigration form. But they came, they arrived. Thank God I didn't have Jerry.
Very bad, man.
Jerry, help me, Jerry. But no, I agree 100%. But the fact that they were the ones that were initially rewarded for this kind of abhorrent behavior, and the fact that Twitter turned a blind eye to that. So on one hand, if you say learn to code, you get banned because it's considered. So how do they connect the dots to that being somebody saying learn to code to somebody? They connect the dots to that being intentional or having an intent to harass somebody. But on the other side, with the Covington kids, they can't connect the dots of actually cause for violence or doxing. They can't make that connection. Right. And that's when you know that they were 100% disingenuous with their interview on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And that's what pissed me off, because don't waste my time.
Yeah.
If you're going to appear on a show like that, and you're going to get up there and say, oh, we're going to be honest and we want to be transparent, you still went around in circles. Yeah. That was a PR stunt. That wasn't transparency.
I think you're right with that. I think what else you deal with, though, is that everyone they hire is left-leaning. And everyone they hire to scan these posts is left-leaning. So no matter what you do, as I'm going to come in there and I'm going to look at all these posts from an unbiased perspective, you already have that bias. So you're already left-leaning. So you overlook the Kathy Griffiths. Oh, I can understand where she was fucking around. But then you look at these other people and it's like, oh no, I have experience with this person and I know he's not fucking around. And I don't know how you alleviate that other than trying to find out people's political perspective when you hire them. But
yeah, that's dangerous.
Yeah, right?
But to counter what you just said, though, think about how we describe Tim Pool. He's meant to be left-leaning, and he's actually fighting for the other side.
But those are the people I enjoy in life.
Well, then he should be in charge of it.
Right.
Somebody like him should be in charge of making sure that actually works. Or the other side of it, and this is a real dangerous path to go down, is either you have free speech or you have no speech. Yeah. So, either it's absolute or it's not.
Yeah.
And of course, if people are actually using the platform to incite violence or to organize violence, then you'll have to step in.
Sure, if you're yelling fire in a crowded theater, you
can't do that, right? But I'm saying, like, when it comes down to interpretations, that gets real dangerous, because unless you have a bunch of honest people that actually respect free speech or respect the ability, because that's the other thing, they want to get up and say that we want to be a platform for free speech or to promote free speech, but you don't have free speech. If you can't say learn to code to somebody without them quote unquote being offended, and then that leads to people being banned, it's a real dangerous situation, especially if they are who they think they are in terms of really influencing political discussions. I don't think they're as big as what they think they are, though.
I don't think that, I think that the reason why they came on Rogan twice in a month was that maybe they're seeing that they're more vulnerable than they thought they were.
I agree with that. I read an article, I'm not sure where it was from, so don't quote me, but Snapchat's overtaken them.
Right.
And
another platform I'm not on, and I could understand.
I was on it when I was younger.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. I haven't been on it in years.
And ladies, if you're out there, stop with the fucking putting bunny ears on your pictures. They're not cute. They're not funny. You
look like a 5-year-old.
When they first came out, they were kind of cute, but now it just, Aaron gets them from people all the time. It's like, okay, this is the same filter. They've sent you 75 pictures from.
And it's a voice filter too. I've seen that.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
And Instagram has the same goddamn. You can do the same thing with Instagram. So I don't even understand why you need Snapchat, but.
But that's a funny thing, though. You think about.
I have a very Snapchat bias. I don't like that platform. I told my son he couldn't go on it because it's just a method to send dick pics to people. How
many methods do you need to
right? Plenty of dick pics out there. You don't need another one.
But the thing, though, that I find funny, though, is Snapchat is not taken seriously.
Right, it's a kid's thing.
It's basically how immature are you, sort of things. As you pointed out, the number one filter of choice in there is something to look like you're 8 years old on Halloween.
On an anime thing.
Yeah, right. and make your voice sound like you just swallowed a bunch of helium.
And it's not funny.
Yes, thank you.
It's not funny at all.
It's not entertaining. It's annoying. It's infuriating.
Yes.
That's why it's so immature. It's how many people can you annoy with one post?
Right.
People keep coming back for more of it. So maybe Kathy Griffin, that's where she should be. But the thing is, a platform as superficial and lacking of any substance like Snapchat has overtaken this great political sphere of conversation in Twitter. What does that tell you about Twitter?
Yeah.
And also the fact that Trump won, right? I don't want to bring that up like it's a gloat or anything because I really don't care. But if we were to go by the numbers on social media, how influential really is social media? If Trump still won and he really, receives all the backlash that he does via social media.
Right.
And you talked about all the people that are left that are on there or operate on that platform. And Trump isn't this ultra-conservative. He's definitely more right-wing than, say, Bernie Sanders.
To be honest with you, I think the whole thing, we've talked about this before, is a smokescreen. I don't think he's right at all.
No, I don't think... And you look at his policies, they haven't really looked like they're right-wing.
He knows how stupid some of the people were who voted for him. Not everybody, but he knows... Just like when Obama got elected, he went far to the left to bring in those wacko far lefties, and Trump went far to the right to bring in those rednecks,
But you think about this.
That is our dog moaning on the floor. For all those listening out there, just let out the world's biggest moan.
I don't think she enjoys this political conversation.
No, she's not into it.
God bless the new audio equipment too. They probably picked all of that up. But the scary thing is though, what we saw with Obama, and you're right, he did lean very hard to the extreme left. But now look at the Democratic Party, and you're starting to see the after effects of that.
Yeah. With
a lot of these new senators that are just idiots.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to the Republican Party after Trump goes? If he's gone hard to the right, are we going to start seeing some hardline right wing, like super right wing alt-righters?
It fascinates me because, and what's nice is I get to work in an environment where I'm in the gym every day with 100, 150 people, and I get to have all these conversations with people here in the podcast, or I go to Strongman or Highland Games and I talk to all these people. And the amount of people who see this all as nonsense, as opposed to the people who are hard right or hard left, there's a huge gap. The majority of people I deal with on a daily basis understand that all this is nonsense. And they have opinions that are right and left, and they run down the middle. But they're all forced to vote one way or another. And if you put a gun to my head right now, I would have had a hard time. Well, I would have had I didn't, and I haven't voted in years, but I would have had a super hard time to decide which one I liked the least between Hillary and Trump. And my political opinions are scattered all over the map as far as left and right. Some swing way left and some swing way right, but I think that the majority of humans on the planet are right down that middle lane, and I just don't know why someone doesn't come out of the woodwork and represent that down the middle of the lane group. I know there's political hurdles in this country to actually get on platforms and get on stages for debates when you're down the middle, but
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that politicians are so embedded with media. And it's not just social media, it's other forms of media too, right? So they have to be somewhat polarizing or controversial in order to sell newspapers, or to sell, not newspapers, but get people to click on newspaper articles, or to get people on social media or whatever. Without that, it's so damning because politicians have a lot of power to, Ben Carson had a hell of a line. I'm not sure if I've said this to you before, but he said that, and this is why I actually like Ben Carson, and this shows how bad politics is. Now, I have a master's in political science, so I'm not estranged to all this stuff, right? So when Ben Carson was actually a candidate during the primaries, I told Asher I liked him a lot. I heard his story, being a brain surgeon growing up in Detroit from a single mother and all these hardships. And we're at a used bookstore. I'll never forget this. And she said, "Oh, here's a Ben Carson book." I said, "I hope to God he doesn't get in." And even though I liked him, she goes, "Why?" Because she knew that I liked him. And I said, "Because if he gets in, I'm not going to like him."
Right.
Because he'll have to have sold his soul essentially, to get on that platform. Even though he did get on that platform, he and plenty of people, even conservative people now, they'll come out and say that they loved Ben Carson, but he didn't have the quote unquote juice to get over the line. Right. He wasn't. But what is that quote unquote juice? It's that polarization to be extreme left or right.
Trump is all juice.
Yes, exactly. And so in a dream world, but think about that somebody who is highly educated when it comes to politics is praying for somebody that they actually don't that they actually like, that he's not successful in it because it will change him. So obviously he didn't get in, and I read the book. Right. So I guess that's a victory for me. But the thing is though, that you talked about people being in the middle. And they're totally disconnected from either side. How could you apply that to what this actual topic is? People are actually disconnected from social media.
Yeah.
This is why I think that there's going to be a massive move away from social media, maybe even quicker than there was for a move to social media.
Yeah, I know. Our political season is getting ready to rev up, and now you're going to get the cast of characters out there, and everyone's going to have their opinions, which are hysterical to me because you work in the local tire shop, but you have these intricate political opinions that you've just sprouted from deep thinking. Well, no, you've listened to Sean Hannity all night, and now you're going to spout off Sean Hannity. So, again, with the unfollow button. So now I just have thousands of people in my friends list that I just don't follow because you've spouted off some political statement that is just ridiculous or silly or something that I don't agree with. And I would rather meet you on the street and have a conversation with you as a human and not have in the back of my mind, oh, this guy's an obvious racist and I don't want to deal with him. So, we're getting to that point where here it comes. You're not going to have down the middles that are going to talk because they're going to keep their mouths shut. So we're just going to have lefts and rights throwing insults back and forth at each other.
But that's the disappointing part because, as I said, when I was growing up, when it was social networking, you had those people in the middle that were actually giving their opinions, and it was actually a fruitful conversation. Yeah. Now, I've got like 2 or 3 people that I'll actually message now. I won't post the thing. I'll say, hey, what do you think of this? So I can actually get their opinion without getting all the other stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's just... The other thing that I want to say about how social media is now is it makes you wonder how many friendships it's ruined.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I was singing...
Absolutely.
I was singing back to a post that I made. I can't remember the post that I made, what it was about. I think it was about the Covington kids. And I think you responded to it as well. It was the Gillette thing. It was that stupid Gillette ad.
Yeah.
And I made a post about it. And I was talking about how this was meant to be a reaction towards what they call toxic masculinity, which is apparently empowered amongst men. And I said that, hey, I've yet to see what is actually toxic masculinity, like sexual harassment and things like that. And I've been in rugby teams. I've been, I've grown up with guys. Obviously, we've gone to bars, we've gone to pubs, we've gone to clubs and stuff like that. But I've never seen anybody endorse in my life.
It's not tolerated.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody went up and started groping a random chick, that's not cool. Like, no one would actually high five somebody or say boys will be boys or anything like that.
It's biker gang mentality. It's not normal humans who are just masculine.
Sure, yeah, of course. So I made that point, and it was a dude that I went to university with. I was actually very good friends with him, even though he was super far left, like incredibly far left. But when we were at uni, we would actually have good conversations, and he would know when I would disagree with him. He'd know that when I would agree with him, right? And he went on this long tirade, and then he deleted me, which I thought was funny, because he went out of his way to write this essay of a response, and then he instantly deleted me. Now, I didn't even know that until I responded to his thing, and I did call him out on his bullshit, because there were times at university where you would see older, mature age students that would say misogynistic comments. Guess who was the one that actually stood up to him? It wasn't him.
Right.
It was me.
Right.
I was the one that actually put him in his place over that. And then afterwards, we would talk about it and we'd laugh about it or whatever. But he's this keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
Of course, but that friendship's, I mean, I wasn't really close to him in the last few months, but there was still somebody that up until that point, had I come back to Australia, I would have been open to having a beer. But once you see that side to him, that little vicious, vindictive, maybe they get caught up in it.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to even be politics. There's people who I love in real life and can't stand on social media. One of my best friends when I was throwing, his name's Chris Chafin, is a fantastic guy. I love him to death. He's like a big monkey. I just love him, but I can't listen to him on social media because he's just, and it's not even political. They're growing from the dog. It's not political. It's just, he just drove me nuts on social media. But if I meet him in person, I love him,
Yeah, I'm not going to give Grant that opportunity. I'm not vindictive, but I don't forget either. like if you're going to come out and say all that shit to me,
yeah.
If you really feel that way, you think that's, and then not even give me a chance to respond to it.
Yeah, especially if you've had conversations in the past where you know this person.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
do you remember, Dan Carlin, who does the hardcore history? He
Yeah.
used to do this show called Common Sense, and it was brutal to watch because he was such a voice of reason, and he was down the middle, but not wishy-washy. So he would understand the left's point, and he would talk about when they had good points, and he would do the
more
same
of that. Yeah.
Exactly. But he got so blasted every time he would put out a podcast. If it was too far to the right, he would get blasted by the left, and vice versa. That he stopped doing it. He just said, "I don't know." I don't know how to have a conversation anymore in this medium. So he just does the history podcast. But the one political show I was listening to, because it was so common sense based, is gone. And now we've lost this voice of reason because of all the voices of unreason on either side of it.
Well, I wish you never caved because those are very much the minorities. I wish people would understand that too. That the extremes on both sides are still very much the minorities.
Yeah.
Because I'll give you an example. As it's expanded to sports, I can make an argument for certain players or whatever. I remember starting to screenshot this, and within the comments they'll say, "Oh, you're only saying this because," and these are like back-to-back comments, and so they'll say, "You're only saying this because you're a fan of LeBron," or "You're only saying this because you're a fan of Golden State." These are back-to-back comments, by the way, and I don't get that so frequently. Right. But then you look at how many other people are actually liking it, assuming they weren't bots.
Right.
And then you realize, and you look at the numbers of the podcast, you look at the numbers of the book sales and stuff like that, and you're like, hey, there's a lot more people that actually like the content that are whinging the keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
I think it's... Here's the dangerous thing about social media. And this is... People might think, hey, you sound like you know a lot about it, but yet you hate it. It's gone from being something that's... I always think communication is the way to empowerment, because communication leads to education and leads to conversation, and you learn. That's how you learn. And then if you're able to learn, then a lot of ignorance and bigotry can go, and that's the way society will progress. But in terms of what social media has become, it's gone from, hey, let's have conversations, let's use this as a form of communication, to an absolute attention-seeking platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think people are addicted to how many likes they get. It doesn't matter if it's bots or what would the like counts like. And I know this because I work in social media with some pretty influential individuals. I'm not going to say what they are, but their response is, when I posted something, it's like, what were the numbers?
Yeah. Not,
okay, that's great. I really enjoyed putting this content out. People have sent these messages through. They're obviously not bots. They're explaining their life story and stuff. That's not what they're interested in. They're strictly interested in the numbers.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing. Because if you're in this for the numbers, you'll never be satisfied.
No.
You need to love what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you don't love what you're doing, it's a matter of time before it becomes horrible.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what happened with Carlin. Maybe that, but then again, I do understand how you can get sour over that too. And it's like you lose your passion for it when you get caught all kinds of.
And you can't win every show you've lost. It in your mind, you like you said, if you look at it from, the majority of the free-thinking, intelligent people in the world are not going to sit down and write a letter to you whining because you don't have the same political stances there. They're just going to go, oh, okay, well, he doesn't have the same political stance as I am on that issue, so I'm going to listen next week and see what he says about this. But those are the people who are stable, normal-thinking humans that you don't get to hear from. The biggest fest I ever had on social media was from that Gillette post, and it was something that I originally sent to Gillette and just reposted. And I don't very often rant on social media because it's stupid. You're just shouting into the wind. But I was pissed off at Gillette. I sent that out, and it was shared I don't know how many times, and it was the biggest post I ever put out ever. But I would hate myself if every day it was some kind of rant against what I'm pissed at in society, because the majority of the time I'm pretty happy with the way society's rolling in my little universe here in Vermilion, Ohio,
Oh, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah. You could have Mongols at the gates, or,
Or it could be Toledo.
I've been in Toledo. I understand Toledo.
No,
I get it.
I don't mind Toledo, actually. It's starting to get a bit better. I found a rugby team down there, so I'm happy.
That's perfect.
But I agree with what you're saying. Now, in terms of the Gillette post, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit here. With what really upset you with it? Was it the commercial by itself, or was that the last straw?
It was, and masculinity is a subject of this podcast, and it's something that, come on, I'm a 45-year-old white male in the United States. I don't have it that rough. So to say that masculinity is being stomped on, it's being attacked in some venues, but masculinity isn't going anywhere, and you can't attack my masculinity. It just doesn't happen. I think what was the last straw for this is a company that is trying to pander to the vocal minority of people yelling and screaming about something, and so they throw out this virtue signaling commercial trying to, they were either trying to be my moral compass as a man, or they just got what they wanted, and they got a bunch of outrage from people, and they got 1 million clicks and 1 million follows and 1 million likes. And so I think that the major part of me was, here was this national company that has been supported by men since its inception, throwing out a shitty anti-man post in order to get likes and clicks, and what they could have said that would have got them no likes and clicks was, stop being an asshole humans.
Yes, that's right.
And no one would have paid attention if it was directed towards all humans, but they had to have that first guy in there where he said toxic masculinity, and then they had the caricature of the guy reaching out to grab the girl's ass, and then you had the guys drinking beer around the barbecue. It was all these stereotypical pictures of how we see men from the 1950s put on men of 2019, like we aren't of any kind of substance or thinking or righteous compass of any kind, And I think it was just all to get likes and clicks.
That the virtue signaling is big.
Yeah,
and that pisses me off too, because what are your actions? What are your words? And I always judge people by their actions. Sometimes I judge them by their words based on what the words are.
Yeah.
But most of the times it's, in one ear out the other, to be completely honest with you. What pissed me off about that ad was, as you said, if they just came out with a video saying, don't be arseholes.
Right.
Because I did my own Gillette thing. I didn't, because I don't use their products, so I didn't write a letter into them or anything like that. But I was pointing out that, hey, how about what would the reaction have been had they targeted black males or religions like Islam or
just
Christian.
Take it one step further.
Yeah, exactly. What would the reaction be? People would have been annoyed, but yet for some reason it's a-okay to launch this crusade against males.
Yeah.
So fuck that.
Yeah.
If that's what their intention was, then of course there's going to be a reaction. People aren't going to like it. You can't spit in someone's face and say, yo, you're part of the problem. Yeah. You can't do that and expect no response. Of course there's going to be backlash to that. And I hope that company goes I know they're not going to because it's a conglomerate. And
people forget.
Yeah, I know. Well, no, I don't think people will forget that individual. But that's the thing, though. I mean, people will forget the ad.
Right.
But I don't think people will necessarily forget the virtue signaling.
Right.
It'll take a big effort to repair the PR.
Well, just from my little point of view, when I go to Target to buy shaving products, I make sure it's not a Gillette product right now. And that doesn't do anything to Gillette. But in my own world, I've made a stand that I won't buy their products anymore.
Good.
Hopefully other people will do the same, But,
I think you'd be surprised how many people will do that.
Yeah.
And God bless the United States because there's plenty of other options.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
It's not like, you're in the middle of Russia where, you can stand in line for the bread and you can't, I don't agree with your political stance, so I'm not getting the bread. So it's, I think what irritated me, though, with the Gillette ad was the final straw. Because we've seen this so many times, whether it's politicians, with Obama or whoever, who have repeatedly, men are not bad.
Yeah.
Think about who's running into a burning house to save children, or who's out there, for wars, or who's a police officer, or
going to the moon.
All these great accomplishments.
Testosterone is a wonderful thing.
Oh, you better believe it. Just ask all the the Russian athletes, the Chinese swim team. Can you imagine? Just think about this. Can you imagine if somebody did an ad talking about the negativities of transgender people?
Oh, sure, right.
And talking about, hey, when are we going to talk about toxic transgender behavior, whether it's the "it's ma'am" thing, or that was hilarious. I can't get enough of that meme.
Yeah.
You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
That GameStop. Or on a more serious note, though, the problems from a mental health standpoint with transgender behavior.
That would happen,
and the suicide rates,
yeah.
which is unbelievable. That needs to be addressed. That's not addressed. And the fact that it's not addressed, once again, goes to a bias. Because if anything that I've learned over the last 5 or 6 years is how spoiled we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I go out of my way to make things more difficult for myself, so I enjoy them more.
Right.
And I don't know if that hardens me up or whatever. I don't know. I don't particularly care. I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I'll be hungry and I think, I can go another 6 hours without eating.
I do the same thing.
Because I just don't need it.
Yep.
But when it comes to people complaining, whether it's feminists complaining about the wage gap or stuff like that, you don't see them marching for people in the Middle East, women in the Middle East who have virtually no rights.
No.
They're only concerned about themselves. So to me, it just points out how spoiled and how privileged a lot of these people are that are stomping their feet and talking about how privileged other people are in order to deflect the attention from how spoiled and privileged they are.
Yeah.
And that to me, and that's what Gillette was.
Yeah.
Gillette has made their money. As you said, they've made their money. What was the slogan of their original ad? What was it? The best a man
can get.
And it's got a guy who's obviously he's a strong male. He's shaved, and lady comes and gives him a kiss on the cheek.
Right.
And that was that's what they made their money on having that strong male. And now all of a sudden they want to tear down what they've actually made money on.
Right.
Go get fucked. I mean, seriously, if you feel that way, give all the money back that you've made off that ad.
Yeah.
If you really feel that that's toxic masculinity, you can't take the money from it for decades, becoming a worldwide brand, and then later on say, well, we don't feel that way now.
Right.
We've learnt from our mistakes, so we're going to tell you how to act, but we're still going to, kiss my ass.
Right. It's in a much smaller scale. I came out of Highland Games, and if 5 years from now, the podcast and the clothing line are huge, and I just go, fuck those guys. Those retards running around in kilts. What the hell are they doing? I mean, that's something I'm very wary of, is where I came from. And what makes you popular to begin with. And
well, the law's on your side though. Think about if you're a drug lord or something, right? And you get busted for whatever, manufacturing or selling or distributing drugs, what happens to your house?
The RICO statutes take it.
Yeah, exactly. Why is that? Because you got that implicitly.
Yeah.
You didn't get that
evidence of ill-gotten gains.
Well, there you go. There's the legal definition of it. There you go. But it's the exact same thing though. If you really feel that you've gotten that stuff from, what was it, Ill-Got Gains.
Ill-Got Gains.
Then give it up.
Give it back.
Yeah. If you don't give it back, once again, actions and words. What do you really believe in?
Because I'm guaranteeing Gillette's not going to stand at line and Target and make sure you're a righteous male before you buy the razors. You know?
That'd be good.
That'd be a better commercial. I would have enjoyed that a little bit more.
Oh my god, that would be funny.
Have you ever grabbed anyone by the pussy? Well, you can't buy that razor, you know.
Oh, she let me.
She let me, right? Well, the other thing is,
boys will be boys.
I always talk about the Gillette's charging like 3 times the money for the same razor, just pink for the women. You know, no one ever bitches about that. If you look at the 2 razors, it's the exact same razor. One's blue, one's pink. The pink one's 3 times as expensive.
But hey, toxic masculinity, man. Can we call it toxic? How could we? Toxic Gillette.
Toxic Gillette. Toxic shaving companies.
We'll think of a better name.
There's a lot of shaving companies out there too that are becoming. I'm like totally obsessed now with kind of grassroots brands, you know. And there's shaving companies out there that are sending you like beautiful razors and shaving products that actually work and that smell good. And I mean, there's plenty of those out there. I'm not shaving anymore, but
you know what I've liked since I've come over here, as you said, is because of the internet, not social media, but because of the internet and the ability to ship stuff. You would know this because you do it yourself. But you're a small. Can you imagine how difficult this would have been 20 years ago?
Oh, impossible. Impossible.
But the opportunities that it's created for competition is through the roof. So now you can have microbreweries. Now you can have that Viking coffee company.
Yes.
You can have all these other places that actually do things right. And they take their time in making sure they're actually passionate about it. It's not just some factory.
I don't look at our brand at Refined Savage any differently than a microbrewery looks at their brand. Very passionate about what they put out there. They want to make sure it's perfect. They're doing all these things to get it better and better and better, and they don't give a shit what's going on outside of their hole. As long as they put out the best product they possibly can, and people are going to the breweries and drinking their beer, and the guy can come out and say, "Hey, did you like that brand? Because I put this and this and this and this," and you can't taste shit, but you can tell he's passionate about every part of that recipe that went into that beer or that coffee or that shaving product, you know.
And it reflects in the product.
Yeah. Yes.
And then it will continue to grow. I think personally there is a limit on how much there's obviously, once you get too big, you can't keep that standard up because you can't keep doing that.
Right.
And at some point you do have to compromise it. So with some of these companies, I do understand that, but then they've got to look at themselves with that, because if they want to sell themselves out, essentially, I mean, that's what it is. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I'm not judging them for doing it if they want more money, but if money was a motivation, then eventually the product will suffer.
Yes.
Yeah. But if the motivation is to make sure that there's a quality product, then you will never essentially go down the route of, you know, sending it off to Mexico or the Philippines to get created.
Yeah, you want to look at the people who are... You're going to get to a point where you're the craft brewer and you're not going to be responsible for every batch of beer that comes out. But then you have to hire the people who are as passionate about it as you are to make sure that line continues. Or you sell out completely and you just try to live off that name, you know.
And then you go and hire a bunch of people that actually try to cut costs.
Right, yeah.
Which will eventually, you know, affect the quality of it.
We just put out a T-shirt that is, it costs me about $3.50, $4 more than all the other T-shirts. And the lady was God bless her, she was trying to keep my costs down. She was like, well, if we took one of these colors out or we took this out. I said, no, I'll charge more money for it, but let's keep it because I love it the way it is. And, you know, it sold really well, but it was because I didn't skimp on that. I wanted to make sure it was as perfect as I could possibly get it. And that's the way I'm going to look at them from now on. If it costs me $20 to put out a T-shirt, then damn it, as long as it's perfect, that's what I want to put out there.
And that's what will separate. That's why people will keep coming back.
Yeah.
Because as I said, once you know, at the start of the show, if you spend all that money, all that effort to get somebody through that door, essentially, to buy that product, and it's a crappy product, what have you done?
Yes.
So if you brought all that money for the social media people or put all that time with your social media accounts just to have fake followers, and then advertise like, well, these are good content posts, you got a lot of followers, let's advertise with it, and it's a dud, then okay, you might have got that initial sale or that initial agreement, but you're not going to get that follow-up.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And
but that was your philosophy with this gym too, wasn't it?
It's
because you were telling me that you purposely, if people don't show up, you don't want them.
Right. So when I first, it was disturbing to me. Probably about a year and a half ago, our daily numbers changed, and they dropped about 20 people a day. And I couldn't figure out what was going on because I was still looking at my books, and I was looking at the people in the gym, and I'm like, these are all the same people that have been here forever. And we're getting new people all the time, so what's going on? And what it was I had this transient population of people who were hanger-oners. So they would come in for a month, and then they would quit for 2 months. And they would come back for a month, and they would quit or they would, people would bring in their friends, and the friends were not jacked about being here, and they would work out for a couple weeks, and then all I spent time doing on social media was getting a hold of these people. Why aren't you at the gym? Come to the gym. You need to come to the gym. Well, I don't have the money. Well, then let me discount the price for you a little bit. I stopped doing all that shit because those people would come to the gym. I'd have to spend 90% of my time with these people, and they'd be gone in a month. So it made the experience for the people. We've got one lady in here, for example, Andrea, who has been here since almost day one. I want to spend 90% of my time with the Andreas, not 90% of my time with these hanger-oners who I have to coax back into the gym every couple weeks. So I noticed that sales were still about the same. The number of people in the gym were about the same. My online programming has gone up considerably because now I've got people who aren't hanger-oners from all over the world, who wish they could live in Lorain, Ohio, so they could come to the gym. But those are my people, They're not the hanger-oners who I have to try to motivate.
If you're living in the other side of the world, specifically Australia, you don't want to live in Lorain, Ohio.
No, you don't. I was telling you this.
Well, I got married. That's a big difference.
I know.
I didn't come here for the gym.
No, or Toledo.
Oh my God.
That wasn't the. But yeah, we've got people in Australia and New Zealand now on the online program, in Germany, and those are my people. And we do things differently than other functional fitness gyms, and I know that for a fact because I'm in the belly of the beast. I mean, there's probably between here and Cleveland, there's probably 20 other gyms that call themselves functional fitness, or they call themselves CrossFit, and which is like Q-tips as opposed to cotton swabs. It's just the same thing, the brand name for it.
What's your opinion of CrossFit?
I think CrossFit is so let me back up. I think functional fitness, which has been done well before anyone knew what CrossFit was. I was doing functional fitness with people way long ago. But I think it's the best thing that's happened as a movement to the fitness industry ever. I think it's gotten more people off the couch. It's gotten more people training correctly and doing these multi-joint, big functional movements that actually are a great hammer and chisel to get you in shape and get you healthy. And then people start looking at their diets. And I think it's great. I think it's great for women because instead of these stick figure models who are very unhealthy, you get to see people like Camille LeBlanc and Annie Thorsdottir and Sarah Sigmund's daughter who have shoulders and asses and abs, and they just look great.
Yeah.
I think the entity that is CrossFit is poison to the functional fitness movement. And in my own personal opinion, I think in a decade from now, functional fitness will still be thriving and CrossFit will either be in a major decline or not around anymore. I think it's a huge company that has lost sight of why it started doing this. I think
so like Gillette.
Yeah, I think the owner has a tendency to cannibalize his own. I think they're very litigious, and I think the more people who wake up to it, I think they scare people into believing that if you drop your affiliation with them, you will automatically go under, which we have proved is not a thing.
My goodness.
I think that they're poisonous. I think they look at other modalities as dangerous and as enemies. So when coaches want to learn from people who aren't affiliated with CrossFit, I think they are looked upon poorly, or as that those people don't know what they're doing, and that could
Sounds
be
like a
further
cult.
from. It's very cult-like at the company level.
The company
is a cult.
Yeah.
The owner has admitted it. He said, it's a cult, but it's a good cult. And look, if you're going to go to a CrossFit gym, it's way better than going to, for 90% of the population, it's way better than going to your local Planet Fitness, because the 90% of the people who walk around Planet Fitness never get any better. They never get in shape. They never find that hammer and chisel to get them better. But anyone who walks into a CrossFit gym and stays for 90 days is automatically going to get in a lot better shape. Now, in 6 months, they may be injured. They may have stalled or stagnated because the programming isn't thick enough. It isn't layered enough. The base of the pyramid isn't big enough. But anyone can walk into any CrossFit gym and get in much better shape in 90 days. It's what you do after those 90 days which separates the normal box owners from the true artists who can actually make this a lifestyle for people and really keep them improving. Because if you don't keep them improving, they leave.
Right. That's a good answer. I can only give you my experience of it. I've never been a fan of CrossFit. I'll be the first to admit that. I've been to a few of them. Yours was one of the first ones that I went to.
Yeah.
And that was years ago. And you were worried that I was upset because you were making jokes about Australia.
Yeah. I didn't know you know. I felt bad. I was like, shit, I hope I didn't piss him off.
No. That was a long time ago. I remember that. I remember Ash telling me that you were worried that I was upset.
I was, because Australia, like we've said this before, I've never met an Australian I didn't like,
Yeah. Well, then you met me.
I'm sure.
Then you met me. No, but then there's a, like with anything else, you've got, you can go into, a Walmart and it's run terribly.
Yeah.
And you can go into a Walmart that's run beautifully.
Sure.
So it always comes from the top down, and how passionate that leadership is at that top, at that manager level. In terms of CrossFit, it's hard to respect an organization who, once again, like Gillette, will get up and preach one thing like, hey, we're all about, improving people's lives and improving their fitness or whatever. But then when somebody dares to step outside the box to try to improve it, they're castrated.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a complete contradiction. I do agree with a lot of what you said. It is a positive overall, in terms of, it's better than not doing anything.
Yeah.
And it has certain parts of it, the social component of it. I think that's very
important.
Yeah. And my wife loves it. She doesn't do it anymore now because there's no good places in Toledo to do it, but she misses it.
Yeah. And
the sad part is there are CrossFit gyms there, but you would think that they would actually adhere to the standards, but they don't. They just... It's dangerous. Like, some of the stuff is dangerous too. Like,
yeah.
I'm not sure if I've told you this, but back home not home, but back in Australia, I'm from Sydney originally, but I spent some time in Port Macquarie. I popped a shoulder out from playing rugby, and I've always had injuries with that. And one of the exercises were shoulder presses. Oh, no, clean and jerk, sorry. And I told the dude, I said, look, I can't do this because my shoulder's definitely going to pop. So his response was, do shoulder presses. I was like, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
This really, you would think, if somebody actually cared about training, they wouldn't say that.
Right.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, they were smart enough to figure that out. I look at, and what you notice on this podcast is a lack of CrossFit athletes. We've only had one CrossFit athlete on the show. That is not for a lack of me reaching out to CrossFit athletes to come on the show. And I think they look at it, I don't know, they don't even respond for the most part, but I've had some fairly high level ones who've agreed to come on the show, and then all of a sudden, literally no show. Like, didn't even show up for the podcast, didn't respond to emails or text messages after that, just didn't show up. And I don't know if it's the paranoid thing was it's coming down from on high. I don't know if it's that, or if someone's saying, oh, Valenti doesn't like CrossFit. Valenti doesn't like Gillette. Valenti doesn't like Q-Tip. Valenti, but all those things have useful products within them. I don't like the upper echelons of CrossFit. They were shitty to us when we were an affiliate. They were shitty to us after we were an affiliate. They do things all the time on social media that are meant to annoy and divide, but yet they preach inclusion. But when I look at these athletes, the athletes are fantastic, and I want to know how Catherine David's daughter trains, because it's a valid system, and she's doing something that has put her in this super body that's capable of doing anything and looking incredibly sexy with these gigantic muscles on her body. So all these things are incredible, and to make the CrossFit Games as an athlete is just an amazing feat, or more. It's actually a more amazing feat than going to a nationals in strongman, because the pool of people that do it and the actual number of people that actually make it is so wide sweeping in opposed to each other, that I want to talk to those people, and I want to talk about their journey and their training. And just because I don't like the entity that is the brand name CrossFit does not mean I have any issue with these athletes who have figured it out within that space and become amazing athletes, and are doing amazing things. I think that those people, maybe even in their head, think that what they're doing is the same thing as the brand name of CrossFit, where you look at a Rich Froning or something, and he's doing his programming. He's figuring out how to make himself better. He's not going to CrossFit.com and downloading today's workout and doing that. He's figuring out how to make himself superhuman, which these people are.
Well, that's why I asked, is it cultish?
Yeah. Because
these people, you would think that a reasonable person would be able to, even if you absolutely despised CrossFit, the fact that you're reaching out to talk to CrossFit athletes doesn't mean that you hold anything against them individually. You would think that they would have the ability. There's
at least 6 or 7 off the top of my head in the Cleveland area alone I've reached out to that and only one has ever come on the show. And if you listen to her interview, we just talked about her training and her ambitions and what she's done in the past, But
once again, it does sound cultish though when you think about it, that they've instantly, I'm assuming they've identified you as an enemy of CrossFit, because if it's that many people, if it was if it was a 50-50 split,
right,
I'd say it might be coincidence.
Yeah.
But when it's you're talking 6 to 7 people that have agreed to come on your show and then just nerfed it at the last second, as opposed to one.
Only one actually did that. Just didn't show up, didn't answer.
Well, we like to exaggerate, though.
Sure, so, 6 or 7 did it.
Maybe a few more.
But if they came on the show, that's not what we're going to talk about. We're not going to talk about CrossFit as a bad thing, because obviously, for you, CrossFit is a good thing, and let's talk about why you're awesome. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a show where I came on and was confrontational about something that someone's passionate about. I mean, I wouldn't have you on the show if you came in and you were an avid skinhead. I wouldn't have you on the show.
Yeah, right. People don't realize. I know that from running my own show. That if I've invited you on, it's to talk.
Yeah.
And you're still my guest, so I'm going to make you as comfortable. I might not always agree with you.
Right.
But I'm not going to be disrespectful to you.
Right.
There's been people that I've had to boot off the show because they've been disrespectful to me. Because once again, you come into my house and you put your foot on my table. I'm not going to put up with that. But no, it's disappointing that people still have that kind of somebody said this, so therefore it must be true.
Yeah.
That kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And the proof is in the pudding. You said you had that person on who is a CrossFitter, and you had a great show.
I think it was our very first interview ever was with Lindsay Kelly, who was a female on the CrossFit Conjugate Black team that took second at the CrossFit Games, and it was a great interview. I mean, it was a shitty interview because I was a shitty interviewer, but...
we'll blame Tom.
Yeah.
That should be a t-shirt.
It was all Tom's fault.
I wonder if he still listens.
He's on the online programming. He's out there somewhere.
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm just
cool.
waiting for him to come back. But I mean, I would love to get some CrossFit.
Maybe you could get Tom on the show.
That would be a good one too. Yeah, but they're out there, and I'll keep sending out messages to different people because I'm interested in them, and I'd love to hear their story, and that's all I'm about is just hearing people's stories, But yeah, the CrossFit and Scientology are very similar in structure and belief,
Has South Park done an episode on CrossFit yet?
I don't know.
God, that's like a season's worth of content.
Oh yeah,
that'd be fantastic. How have they not done this?
I don't. They may have.
Maybe they have shares in CrossFit.
Could be, yeah.
Bastards.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about? We've been talking forever here. Get you back to Toledo, and I'm gonna probably go out there and sweat a little bit.
I'm done, man. I all the social media. We came to talk about social media. We spent about 20 minutes on it.
Yeah, right.
It's good. That's probably more than what it deserved.
Yeah, that's.
But no, it's a pleasure as always, man.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime, and I'm sure this is your third time.
Yeah. I've been. It's like every 2 months, man.
You and Pal Wenzel I drag on here. Let's have you and Pal on at the same time.
Do it.
Yeah.
I don't even know who that is, but sure, do it. I've probably edited a few of these shows.
Let's shut this down and go enjoy our Friday. This has been The Refined Savage. See ya. Thanks for listening to the show, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Next up on the show is Andy Vincent and Chuck Casson. We're going to do a special bonus episode that is going to be this coming Monday. So check that out, and then we'll go from there.